Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, so today we are unpacking a truly fascinating concept about human resilience and psychology. We constantly hear about all the habits we need to adopt to become mentally stronger, right? Things like practicing gratitude or keeping a journal or meditating. But the core thesis we're diving into today actually flips that entire idea completely on its head. We're going to discover why building true mental strength isn't just about what you add to your life, it actually requires actively eliminating your bad mental habits. Basically, it's about subtraction, not just addition.
To really wrap our heads around this, let's start with a scenario most of us know all too well. We've all got that one person in mind, right? That one Facebook or Instagram friend whose life just seems flawless. They live in this gorgeous house, they have a wildly rewarding career, and literally every single weekend they are off on some picturesque family adventure. Honestly, you almost suspect they hired a professional photographer to follow them around because they always look perfect, and they're constantly posting about how blessed and grateful they are. And if we're being completely honest with ourselves, sometimes it is really hard not to resent them just a tiny bit for it.
So you're scrolling through your feed, rolling your eyes, and you're probably thinking, so what? It's just 5 seconds of annoyance. How could that possibly be hurting me? Well, here is where it gets crazy. Researchers have actually found that envying your friends on social media directly leads to depression. Yeah, really. That seemingly harmless, fleeting moment of eye-rolling is actually a trap set by our own minds. It feels incredibly small in the moment, and hey, judging them might even make you feel a bit better temporarily, but it is quietly eating away at your mental strength. And that little moment of envy brilliantly illustrates the broader framework we really need to understand today, because envy is just a symptom of a much larger issue. There are essentially 3 core types of destructive beliefs that make us less effective in our daily lives and completely rob us of our mental fortitude. They fall into 3 buckets: unhealthy beliefs about ourselves, unhealthy beliefs about others, and unhealthy beliefs about the world. Let's break these down one by one so we can actually learn how to spot them in our own heads. Okay, so the first destructive belief centers entirely around ourselves, and it usually rears its head as self-pity. Now, don't get me wrong, it is absolutely okay to be sad when something bad happens, but self-pity, that goes way further. It happens when you start to magnify your misfortune. You start thinking, man, why do these things always have to happen to me? This mindset is incredibly dangerous. Why? Because hosting your own personal pity party keeps you completely stuck. It forces you to fixate on the problem rather than actually finding a solution. And even if a direct solution isn't possible, self-pity prevents you from taking the necessary steps to make your life or someone else's even just a little bit better. Let's move on to the second type, unhealthy beliefs about others. This creeps in when we think other people can somehow control us. Consider this incredibly common phrase. I'm sure you've said it. I have to work late. Well, when you say that, you are actually giving away your power. As adults, there are very, very few things we literally have to do. Yes, obviously there are consequences if you don't work late, but it ultimately remains a choice you are making. The exact same thing applies when you say, "Oh, my mother-in-law drives me crazy." You are handing her your power. She might not be the absolute nicest person on earth, but you are in complete control of how you respond to her. The third and final destructive belief involves how we view the world at large. We naturally have this tendency to think that the world owes us something, right? We convince ourselves that if we put in enough hard work, we automatically deserve success. But expecting success to just fall into your lap like some sort of cosmic reward, that is only ever going to lead to massive disappointment. The world simply doesn't operate on a strict karmic ledger, where good deeds guarantee immediate rewards. Holding on to that expectation is a huge psychological trap. Now, identifying these habits in our day-to-day lives is one thing, but understanding why it is absolutely vital to eliminate them requires looking at what happens when life truly tests us. I want to share the profoundly moving personal story of the source material's author, a therapist named Amy Morin. At age 23, she had everything figured out: a great career, a new marriage, a new house. But then, entirely out of nowhere, her healthy 51-year-old mother passed away from a sudden brain aneurysm. As a therapist, she knew intellectually how to handle grief, but actually living it was entirely different. Then, 3 years later, on the exact anniversary of her mother's death, she and her 26-year-old husband, Lincoln, went to a basketball game to honor her mom. They had a really wonderful night. But shortly after they got home, Lincoln collapsed. He suffered a fatal heart attack. In a brutally short span of time, she suddenly found herself a 26-year-old widow without her mother. It's honestly almost impossible to imagine the sheer weight of that kind of consecutive grief. But it was in the absolute depths of this incredibly painful period that Amy made a massive realization. She realized that when you're really, truly going through tough times, good habits just aren't enough.
You can practice all the gratitude and positive thinking in the world, but it literally only takes 1 or 2 small, toxic mental habits to completely hold you back from healing. When you are facing unimaginable tragedy, you absolutely must shed the bad habits.
To really cement this concept, let's think about it like physical strength. It's like a giant puzzle. If you want to be physically strong, you have to go to the gym and lift weights. But if you really want to see results, you cannot go home and eat junk food all day long, right? You just can't out-train a bad diet. Well, mental strength works the exact same way. If you want to be mentally strong, you absolutely need good habits, like practicing gratitude. But those good habits are completely undermined if you don't simultaneously give up the mental junk food, like harboring resentment over somebody else's success. So the big question is, how do we actually execute this? How do we train our brains to think differently and drop that mental junk food? It starts by systematically countering those 3 unhealthy beliefs we discussed earlier. Rewiring your brain requires 3 major mindset shifts: going straight through your discomfort, changing who you compare yourself to, and accepting the inherent unfairness of life. Let's tackle that first one. Unhealthy beliefs about ourselves usually stem from a really strong desire to avoid emotional discomfort. Feeling sad or hurt or scared is deeply uncomfortable, so we go to great lengths to escape it, often by hosting those pity parties we talked about earlier. But distracting yourself? That only prolongs the pain. The only way to get through uncomfortable emotions is to actually go through them. You have to allow yourself to feel the sadness so you can eventually move on. And doing that ultimately builds your confidence in your own ability to handle anything life throws at you. And what about our beliefs regarding the world? Deep down, we desperately want the world to be fair. We really want to believe that if we just tough it out through enough bad times, we'll get a reward at the end. But you have to accept that life isn't fair. And I know that sounds incredibly cynical at first, but it is actually completely liberating. Think about it. Yes, it means you won't necessarily be automatically rewarded just for being good. But it also means that no matter how much you have suffered in the past, you are never, ever doomed to just keep suffering. The universe isn't punishing you. Your world is what you make it. Let's look at a highly practical case study that proves just how powerful changing these beliefs can be. Amy Morin once worked with a diabetic man whose bad mental habits were literally destroying his physical health. Because his own mother had died young from diabetes complications, he developed this incredibly unhealthy belief about his own destiny. He believed he was simply doomed. So he completely gave up trying to manage his blood sugar. Because of this fatalistic mindset, his blood sugar skyrocketed, his vision started to fail, and he even had his driver's license taken away. His entire world was shrinking rapidly, all because he didn't think trying was worth the effort anymore. But then he agreed to make just one single small change. He agreed to drop one bad habit. Let's walk through this incredible domino effect because it is wild. First, he swapped his daily 2-liter regular Pepsi habit for Diet Pepsi. He complained about the taste constantly, but his health numbers quickly started to improve. Seeing that tiny victory, he decided to swap his nightly bowl of ice cream for a low-sugar snack. Then he bought this beat-up exercise bike from a thrift store and pedaled while watching TV. Eventually, he lost weight and suddenly noticed he could actually see the television a bit more clearly. The damage to his eyesight wasn't permanent. This completely shattered his belief that he was doomed. He set a new goal to get his driver's license back, completely on fire with the realization that he could, in fact, change his world. And that brings us to the final, most absolutely crucial thought of this entire explainer. That man transformed his life, his health, and his entire future, not by overhauling everything overnight, but by dropping just one bad habit and letting the momentum build. So I want to leave you with a really provocative question to ask yourself for right now. What bad mental habits are currently holding you back? What unhealthy beliefs are keeping you stuck in place? And most importantly, what is one small step that you could take today to give that habit up? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Now I challenge you, go take that first step today.